Welcome, welcome, welcome. I'm your host, Alex Deezus, and this is, believe it or not, the 33rd episode of Speedify Live, the show where we talk about everything that is streaming, the many aspects and forms of live streaming. We share experiences, interesting stories, and information on how to make your streams better. Our special guest today is Michael Reeder. He is a clinical professional counselor and psychotherapist. We asked Michael to join us because counseling, just like almost everything else, has moved online.
Indeed.
Hi, Michael.
Hello. Nice to meet everybody. How are you?
I'm good. Can you tell us just a little bit about yourself before we dive into things?
I'm a licensed clinical professional counselor in Baltimore City, Maryland. Went to Johns Hopkins a while back, and I see mostly individual adult clients for a wide range of issues, the usual depression, anxiety, trauma. I see a lot of attention deficit, ADHD. And these days, there's a lot going on with pandemic and holidays, and I'm just a general purpose counselor.
Oh, that's good. Yeah. So how did you start out with, virtual therapy?
I started out several years ago when I had clients with health issues who were not sure till the morning of if they'd be able to make it to my office or not. So I would do a virtual online session with them, usually spur of the moment, and that was absolutely fine. And then occasionally with people who weren't able to make it all the way into my office if they had a long drive and they had another appointment.
In March, long before the pandemic, right?
That was long before the pandemic, and only a few sessions a week, maybe 2 or 3 sessions a week. Okay. I can see anywhere between 28 and 35 people a week. So it was a small percentage of my business at the time.
Right. I mean, are you still doing any in-person therapy, or is everything virtual now?
Right now, it's all virtual. Since the last week of March 2020, we went very suddenly. I say we, the other therapists in my office suite and I, we all went very suddenly virtual. And I've stayed that way to present. I'm still paying rent on my office for some reason. So I could go back. I don't know why. I could go back in person, but I'm staying virtual for now out of an abundance of caution.
So we had a 5,000 square foot office in Center City, Philadelphia. The lease just ended in September, but I would just go there and sit, right? Because I was paying for the space. So I'd sit alone in my 5,000 square feet because, damn it, I'm paying for it.
I can feel that, yes.
So how is online therapy different than in-person therapy?
I will go through it, but it's a lot less different than I thought it would be. It's different for some clients, not most, in that they feel less connection. It's hard to demo on camera, but like there's a connection you feel when you're in the room with people.
Yeah.
Most clients and myself, we can feel it through the camera. Some don't. There's also the experience of the space, and I learned this early in my career, but not like the space behind me. Early in my career, I learned to set up an office that was a healing environment. So it's a soothing environment, got a waiting room with music, coffee, tea. I've got an inviting space, cushions, bright lights.
Yeah.
And there's something about going to a place where you're going to heal that becomes part of the healing, because it's mental health. Same where like a doctor's office would have, they'd have diplomas on the wall and stuff, which I don't care about, but it shows that you're in an expert place of healing. So the psychotherapists have their equivalent. Now the advantages are no commute. The advantages are similarly convenience, no COVID exposure, and I'm not as able to read body language online. That's been less of a problem than I thought it would, because I can read facial expressions. I might be able to see people's hands, but usually not. I gesture a lot as I talk, which probably doesn't help on camera.
Mhm.
So there's less body cues for me to read.
Okay.
And
So I'm sorry.
yeah, go
We're
ahead,
live. So if anyone has any questions for me or for Michael,
please.
just ask them in the comments underneath. Yeah, so we're here. So
Yeah, I'll switch over to.
Kane says, "Hey, Mike." All right.
Okay. How are you?
So that's our first comment. Very exciting. But so say hi or ask questions to either of us or comments or whatever. We're here. We'd love to hear from you. So we made through Thanksgiving. So I understand a lot of people find Thanksgiving very stressful.
Yeah.
What is it that makes it so stressful for people?
In a nutshell, family interaction, and that can be good or bad. So if you can imagine somebody has trouble getting along with their mom, okay, here comes a holiday, Thanksgiving, Christmas, Yule, whatever, where they now have to interact with mom. If somebody has a father who dead names them, if they're transgender, do they go to dad's house and get dead named? If someone has very few friends and family, they're going to be more lonely at a holiday because that's when you're expected to be around people. On the other hand, it's a time when some people's mental health gets better because they're almost obligated to get together with friends and family, and that usually helps mental health.
Yeah.
So think of a holiday as an accelerant on whatever positives and negatives the person has in their psyche.
Yeah.
And
so
then,
I guess that's the same with a lot of the holidays, right?
Yeah, the big
Christmas.
ones in the U.S. Thanksgiving, Christmas, Yule, but really any holiday, especially if there was a death or a birthday of someone who's died near the holiday, then people will tend to have their grief resurface at that holiday.
Right. Oh, so here's a question. Michael, how do you keep your mental health on a good level after counseling troubled individuals on a daily basis?
Sometimes it's being able to help people, and that alone helps my mental health. Sometimes it's getting away and relaxing, doing something I want to do, hanging out with my wife. Essentially, I need a break from counseling, like everyone needs a break from their job. The work itself is usually rewarding, which helps. I've got a lot of clients who don't like their jobs. I like my job, helps a lot. But doing something else is essentially. I'd like to say getting good sleep. Right now, I'm short on sleep, so I don't always follow through everything I recommend.
Okay, that's one thing I'm pretty good about. I actually do sleep from 10 to 6 every night. So, really dumb question. What is stress?
Okay.
Everybody talks about stress. Everyone has a vague sense they know what it is, but
so stress starts off as a physiological response where hormones kick in for fight, flight, or freeze. And so something big's about to happen. Your body revs up, gets ready to deal with it, and so your senses are heightened. You're more on alert. You're more capable to deal. Now, if this happens day after day after week after week after month, your body gets worn out. You get adrenal fatigue. You get stuck in a constant state of vigilance. Now you start to have the problems associated with stress: fatigue, brain fog, feeling overwhelmed. You're probably eating badly if you're constantly under stress. Stress messes up the circadian rhythm, so your sleep probably gets worse. And then that leads to a whole host of mess: higher blood pressure, depression, anxiety, foggy thinking itself. So that's the basics of what stress is. Throw in some junk food if I hadn't mentioned that yet, and your nutrition. affects mental health as well. So overwhelmed, really, overwhelmed and fogged out.
Right, right. So at what point should it start to worry us? Like how do I know the difference between, little a little bit of working hard at work and, being too stressed?
It should start to worry you when rejuvenation is becoming really, really difficult. And usually that's an environmental thing. Like you're in an environment that you're having trouble changing. You're in a stressful job and it's going to stay stressful forever. Now, maybe you can do something about that. Maybe you can switch jobs. Maybe you can't. You're in a friends and family environment that's likely to stay that way, and you've had trouble changing your relationships with people. So essentially, you get worried about it when you're stuck in it.
Yeah.
Or you could get worried about it when you progress into depression or anxiety, which we might talk about in a moment. But anytime your fatigue and your feeling of being overwhelmed is feeling permanent, that it does not have to be that way, but that's when you start worrying.
Right, right. Okay, so well, so let's go there. So differences between stress, anxiety, depression.
Sure. So anxiety is mostly about the future. It's what will happen tomorrow? What will happen next week? Well, what if this awful thing happens? So it's a worrying about the future, and it's often but not always repetitive thought. You get stuck in a loop of worry about this thing that's coming up. Usually said thing is not as bad as your imagination. Right. There's exceptions, so you can't say for sure it'll go okay, but it probably will. It'll probably go better than your worry. So you get stuck anticipating, and it is related to stress, right? But right. You're just keyed up about the future, and you've got a negative thought pattern going also. So somebody who's anxious and depressed, somebody who's anxious or depressed is making cognitive mistakes most of the time. They're assuming the worst. They're imagining what other people think without knowing how they actually think. There's a lot of other cognitive mistakes they could be making.
Wow, that's interesting. Mistakes. Yeah. All right, so what do people do? So I decide I have anxiety or huge amounts of stress. I mean, what am I supposed to do? You said part of the problem is people think they can't change it.
There's a bunch of stuff.
Well, they do.
There's a bunch of stuff, and it's hard to do all of them. But the good news there is there's a lot of them, and we can usually step our way out of the problem, either with me or on your own, or so increased supports, especially for extroverts. So are there friends that you no longer call that you could call for support? Are there family members who are supportive? This is harder when the friends are absent and the family is hostile. Right. Can you get some more sleep? And there's strategies for getting better sleep if you're having trouble with it. That's a good discussion. Can you improve your nutrition? Can you exercise? I say hypocritically. And
I mean, as a last resort, there's nothing else.
Last resort, absolutely. and the really unfair thing is that exercise in the morning is associated with the lifting of depression. Who wants to exercise in the morning if they're depressed? It's like almost sadistic for me to say, but it's true. And also changing thought patterns. So either on your own or with a therapist or with a family member, like what are the thoughts that are not logical? It's called cognitive behavioral therapy or CBT. It's not the only way to work on it, but people who are depressed or anxious get stuck in thought patterns they've probably had for decades. They're so automatic that they become almost unconscious, where they assume the worst is going to happen, or they assume everybody hates them, or they assume their friends are all tired of listening to their stuff. And if you can challenge some of that, and if you're willing to admit it might not be the worst case, or you have a friend who might listen to you, you can start to feel a little better. Or, well, sometimes I do well at that task. You can start to feel a little better. I also work from an existential standpoint, which in English means, what do you care about? What's important to you? And can you live it? So a lot of people who are anxious or depressed are not living a lifestyle of things that are important to them, that matter. Okay, how can we hook your life up with some of that? And
Right.
That's another good way to walk out of depression or walk out of anxiety. So I've just listed off a whole bunch of stuff. I've listed a couple of therapy techniques: CBT, existential counseling. There's others. Me just listening to people. Sometimes I need to shut up, which I'm not going to do in an interview, and listen to people. Therapists are famous for sitting here and nodding and saying, yes, go on. I try not to do that a whole lot, but some people need someone to listen to them.
Yeah.
That helps. And then exercise, sleep, nutrition, if you've got the energy. That gets hard when someone's depressed with low energy. Getting them to do a thing is tough. And it's walking them out of it very slowly, and also explaining that it's mostly not their fault, right? So if somebody can't get going in the morning, well, they're chemically unbalanced. Maybe if they can do a little thing, they can feel a little better, but maybe they can't do what they're normally able to do, and we should stop blaming them. Because there's a lot of weight to blame. If somebody's blaming themselves or their family's blaming them, that keeps them in the hole.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think I've probably over-answered the question, but maybe there's a few angles I didn't get.
That was fantastic. Again, we're live. Anyone watching, if you have any questions for
happy
Michael,
to.
just put them in the comments, and we're happy to answer them. Maybe we should shift gears, though. Let's talk about how you do the sessions, from hardware, software, that kind of thing. I mean, are you just is this just Zoom, or are you using special software?
I'm using something that's very much like Zoom. I have to use software that is compliant with medical privacy regulations. There is a version of Zoom that's like that, but I use sessions from Psychology Today, which works well. I use Ring Central. Notice I use two. I always have two on, because I try to have redundancy, because it's so important not to get knocked offline. We'll get to Speedify in a moment, but
I'm a big believer in redundancy.
Yeah, so I've got two cameras for boring reasons, but redundancy. I've got a couple computers. I've got too many ISPs. I've got a couple of video services. So I've got a lot of redundancy built in. I think you asked about hardware, right?
Yeah, let's ask about hardware.
Yeah, okay.
Well, actually, we have a question here.
Okay.
Wait, it disappeared. Michael, you are very calming, and your advice is great. Have you ever thought about putting out YouTube or TikTok videos to help people? How about a group live stream?
Those are good ideas, and I'd have fun doing it. A million years ago, I did some very old, now low quality YouTube videos. They're ancient. My hair is darker. I talked about depression. I talked about attention deficit, ADHD. I talked about barriers to psychotherapy. It's and a bunch of other stuff. I should get back to it. I've been really busy. Mental health professionals have been slammed during the pandemic. I guess that's good from a business standpoint, but it's not good for the world. So I'd like doing that, but I don't need the marketing right now. The people are coming at me. It's a good problem to have. Yeah.
It's like an undertaker, right? I don't wish anyone any harm, but I wish business was better.
It's very much like, yeah. I'd have fun doing those. It's a good suggestion. And thank you.
Cool. Yes. What kind of hardware do you use when you're streaming?
Pretty ordinary stuff. So, excuse me. I've got a Windows 10 professional laptop. I've got a Microsoft Surface, a very old one here, which I take handwritten notes on. So I've got electronic notes, but I can write off camera. And if I was in person in my office, it would be balanced on my knee. A couple cameras I already mentioned. I've got 3 ISPs for redundancy, load balancing, reliability, and faster speed. Enter Speedify. I've got a couple of Raspberry Pi, I'm going to say servers, but I hesitate to call that device a server. One of them's running Speedify for me. Another one's running, I'm not being rude when I say this, Pi-hole is the name of the software. They call it that, which is a domain name service, a DNS server. So it looks up the names of websites, but more importantly, blocks ones I don't want to be contacted. And I also have Bitwarden for password security. I shouldn't say that, but so anyway, I have a couple of Raspberry Pi servers running.
Oh, neat.
For
anyone who's not familiar, this is a Raspberry Pi. It's a little Linux computer. They advertise them as $35, but that doesn't even include the power cord. But still,
no.
It's less than $90 to have a complete working computer hooked up.
Yeah, and they're really cool. They like to corrupt their drive occasionally, which is an issue when it's in a production environment. But it's a cheap way to get stuff running, and so I'm using a couple of them.
So I saw that a lot on the Raspberry Pi 3s.
Well, that's one of them. Yeah.
I don't think I've had that happen a single time since I went to the Raspberry Pi 4.
Maybe I should.
Yeah. Okay. So I think it's a real thing. People used to. I used to just destroy SD cards.
That's what happened. Yeah. Yeah. I've got a Raspberry. One of the later.
Since I went to the 4.
4 I should do. I've got one of the later 3s with an overclocked CPU, so it can run Speedify okay.
Oh, nice. Yeah. The 4 is a lot fast. On the 3, we were only able to get Speedify to reliably go 90 megabits. Sometimes it could go faster, but on the 4, we can reliably get it to go 400 megabits, which is,
that's incredible.
Fast enough for most people.
So right prior to this call, I tested, and it was 90 megabits per second, just like you're saying.
Yeah.
Now, Baltimore is a special type of internet hole. Only lately have I been able to get T-Mobile 5G service, which is up to 450 megabits per second. Now that's average in some suburbia communities. Like Texas suburbs might get 450 more megabits per second. Baltimore prior to T-Mobile 5G, the best I could get was 150 with Comcast, and worse with 4G cell tower services. So I really needed Speedify to speed me up.
Nice.
And I'm paying through the nose for multiple ISPs because I have to. I have to stay online. My business is at stake.
Yeah. That's the business, right? So a couple things. One, on Thursday at this time, 5 p.m. Eastern, our stream is going to be me reformatting this Raspberry Pi and, live streaming, just going through step by step and setting it up to be a Speedify router. I think sounds like you've already done it. I think our documentation is pretty clear, but I'm just going to go through and I'm going to do it, and that we'll do that Thursday. So anyone interested?
Yeah, no, it was good.
Join me in 2 days.
Yeah, and I learned how to have backup drives and change them when they corrupted. But I'm on the old version of the Pi, so
yeah. I'm sure it can still happen, right? Things break.
Oh, it works.
But like I said, I haven't lost one SD card in, I don't know, 2 years, whatever it is. Since
if it happens too much, I'll upgrade. So
and it's a lot faster.
Okay.
So may I just talk for a second?
Please.
Our setup here right now, we are using Streamyard, right, which is video in the browser. Oh, here we are. So I'm using Speedify. So I think you are too, right?
I am too. Yes.
Right. So I'm on Wi-Fi and Ethernet, both going to my home Fios internet connection, and I also have a tethered cell phone, and that goes through Speedify, and then it goes to Streamyard, which is sending it to YouTube and Facebook and Twitch and LinkedIn and everywhere else. So that's what we're doing here, right? We're each on our own computers running Speedify and running the Streamyard client in the browser for anyone in the audience interested. Seems great. I mean, there are definitely other ways to live stream, but this is so easy, right? Nobody had to install anything. It's pretty good. What kind of microphone do you use? Audio is really important, right? Uh-oh. What? I wonder if he dropped his tea mug on his camera like I did last week. It was a foolish mistake I did to take myself out. All right, we'll wait for him to pop back in, I'm sure. So we talked about. So do you guys know what Speedify is? I assume you do since you're watching the show, but I will just rant about that for 30 seconds. So it's our app, Speedify.
Okay.
That lets you combine multiple internet connections on your phone, your computer. Welcome back, Michael.
And
what happened? Is there a story or just stop?
I don't know, but something must have cut out. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
Huh.
I forget.
Streamergency. The stressful situation when one's live stream breaks down or cuts out unexpectedly.
So
which used to happen a lot more than nowadays.
Yeah. Do you have any good, other than what just happened, any good Streamergency stories of the internet failing on you?
I do, and hopefully they're not too boring. But so March 2020, all the therapists on Earth go on to video conferencing services, usually ones that are not as well known, like Doc See Me for Dr. See Me, Sessions by Psychology Today, and others. And those are all small companies, so they're beefing up their capabilities and failing frequently. So that was a type of emergency. The various internet services in inner city Baltimore, their infrastructure is not as good as elsewhere. So they were straining under the load. And either because they were overloaded or because they choose to throttle to protect their network, I would have stream emergencies. Let's use AT&T Business Cellular Service as an example. It's got a 100 gigabyte data cap per month. That's fine. I paid for that. I'd like more, but hey. But they would not let me use it up to 100 gigs. Instead, without advertising it, they would throttle my connection somewhere between 5 and 9 gigs on a daily basis. So using...
That's not the same.
not cool at all. Because, if I got up to 100, I'd understand.
Yeah.
So using Speedify, one of the things you don't think about is if it's splitting my data stream between 3 ISPs, I don't get up to that daily threshold. Therefore, my AT&T connection remains useful all the way to 100. So,
yeah,
now, but at the same time, if say Comcast went down, then Speedify would switch over to AT&T more, and that would be fine, because I wouldn't have whatever artificial intelligence is watching me throttling my connection in ways that are not advertised. So that's an advantage of Speedify service that I don't think gets mentioned much, because probably not too many people have 3 ISPs. But if you have to do that, you have to do that.
Yeah. Oh, another question. Miguel.
Let me switch back to
comments
too.
Is it possible to render group therapy session for depression without listening to the patient? I assume they mean patient, not the patent.
It is possible to have group therapy where I can have multiple clients online. I would want to always listen to the client or the patient. No, I wouldn't do it without listening to them unless I was doing a lecture, but then that's not group therapy. So maybe I'm misunderstanding part of the question, but I can do group therapy if I wanted to online with multiple people.
Do you ever?
Yeah, I don't. No, I do individual. I'm not doing groups. I have in the distant past.
Right.
It's a thing I could do. But then I'd have to bill multiple insurances for the same hour. It's It's a pain, and they pay very low for group therapy. But I could help more people at a time, so that, I mean, there's advantages.
All right, here's another question. Is it just a myth, or can pets really help people with depression or other issues during the holidays? Is sometimes getting a pet a solution for certain people?
I'd say yes. A lot of people are happier with the pet. Um, I have, I have clients with, they call them service animals, but they're emotional support animals. Yeah, especially if someone's lonely, having a pet during the holidays helps the loneliness, because the pet is company. The pet has a personality, so that's not fake. That's real. They really do help. Conversely, I often do grief counseling that is every bit as severe as if a person died when the pet dies. And so some people are really, really attached to their pet. It matters. So yeah, pets help.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dogs in particular, there's a dose of built-in exercise too, right? I don't know. I walk my dog 4 times a day. I don't think he needs it. I don't think he needs it actually, but I just
then
get out of the house with him and start walking.
Good.
And
yeah, you get a break, like I should be doing that. You get a break from your work. You get exercise, which helps depression. You get vitamin D, sunlight. Fun fact: if in the winter people tend to not get outside, therefore they get less vitamin D. Low vitamin D is associated with depression. So you might want to ask your doctor, because I can't say it. I'm a talk therapist. If you need vitamin D, or research it yourself. There's also seasonal affective disorder.
Do those lamps?
Exactly.
Do they work?
They work. Yeah. There's research studies showing they work, and anecdotally, when I hand them out to my clients, about half say that they feel a lot better. That's not a research study. That's informal. But a while back, I bought a ton of used lamps off eBay for cheap. So I tend to loan them out to my clients when I'm meeting in person with them during the winter months, and they work. They also reset the circadian rhythm if you've been highly stressed. Going back to our earlier discussion, you use a sun lamp early in the morning, it wakes you up, but surprise, you're more likely to fall asleep sooner and more deeply in the evening, because it's telling a primitive part of your brain it's dawn. So that you've got that light in your face. Pretend my hands are light. You've got that light in your face. Receptors in your eyes go, oh, sunlight, and then reset your circadian rhythm so that you can fall asleep at a better time, which has been messed up by the stress hormones.
Right. Okay.
But yeah, vitamin D and exercise is a twofer for depression. And companionship from the dog. It's a win all around, except for sleeping.
All right. So how big a difference do you think the pandemic has made, are you seeing, to people's mental health? Is it just they can't come in, or are people really stressed?
I'm seeing a lot. People were really stressed in the beginning for a variety of reasons, and I'm going to run down to my notes section real quick. All right, so you could get greater depression from isolation, especially young adults who live alone. That's where I was seeing more depression. People who have family members at home, there was some built-in insulation against depression from isolation. Excuse me. But I would see people who were a lot less stressed. These were the office workers who could work from home. So sometimes I have a lot of clients whose primary problem, frankly, is their job. And if they just changed jobs, they wouldn't need me. And to my credit, I would.
And you try to tell them, right?
I do. Yeah. I wouldn't do a job if I didn't. But sometimes when you work from home, you don't have to deal with the coworker or the boss in person, and often you're feeling better. Conversely, I've got a lot of nurses on my caseload. They're working longer hours, much more stress. A lot of them are working with COVID patients. they're strangely not as scared by that as you think they would be. They believe in the PPE they're wearing, but they're stressed.
Right.
Some fear of getting it, but more often the fear is I'll give it to my parents. Yeah. Or I have a couple clients who are immune compromised. They're afraid of getting it.
Right. Well,
and
yeah.
Early on, there were fears around the vaccine.
So
but
there's, you said early on, are there still, I mean, it seems like there's a pretty big unvaccinated population that.
Yeah, that's where we get into politics. So Baltimore is worried about COVID, and well, there's reasons sections of Baltimore are not well vaccinated, but the area in general is very well vaccinated. As you move out from Baltimore into the countryside in Maryland, and especially as you move into Pennsylvania, people are paying less attention to COVID. There are exceptions, of course. I don't know how things are in Philly, but so I often have a discussion with clients of, I want to go to this event at my friends or family, but I don't think anyone would be wearing a mask, and I know so-and-so is not vaccinated. So centrally to Baltimore, where I'm working, people pay attention to the COVID issue. But so now we tie back into holidays, right? Because do you go to see your family if they're anti-vaxxers? Do you go to see your family if they don't wear masks?
So I know a couple people who have thrown parties, a wedding, a Jewish naming ceremony, where everything was going fine. They thought everyone was vaccinated. And they said, turns out I need to check vaccination cards, and then suddenly all these people canceled, and people suddenly realized that like lots of my friends and family actually are unvaccinated. And the second I asked to see the card, they reveal themselves, and it's often wealthy, smart people.
That doesn't surprise me, but all of the vaccination required events I've heard about haven't checked the cards, so that's interesting.
Yeah,
I will say that people that are concerned about COVID-19 in my practice started having events again this summer and early fall. Now I don't know what's going to happen with Omicron,
Yeah,
but
we'll see whether it gets around the vaccine.
No,
the latest rumors are that the symptoms are less bad, right? That's probably the ultimate exit from this, right? Is that the virus actually evolves to kill less people until we forget about it.
That's a likely exit from what I've heard from medical experts. It gets more contagious but less deadly over time because it's killing its host. That's not good for it.
And the evolution, right?
Right.
The evolutionary pressure on the virus.
I think it's Dr. John Thompson. I think Dr. John Thompson on YouTube has a channel. He's semi-retired. He does a daily update. He's highly educated. And he had looked at a couple reports out of South Africa, one from a doctor in an area where most people were vaccinated. That doctor was reporting very, very mild symptoms from Omicron. And then one from a doctor in an area where people are less vaccinated and reporting moderate to severe symptoms. So it's possible, this is conjecture, it's possible that vaccination status determines that. We'll see.
Yeah. I mean, you kind of need big numbers because the truth is, even with Delta, apparently half the people don't get any symptoms that they notice. So,
yeah, I'm hopeful. Well, let's see with Omicron.
Barbara says, I do appreciate their honesty because I worry how many are like the NFL quarterback and lie. Yes.
Yeah.
It's that was tragic. That was very upsetting. My wife was a huge Aaron Rodgers fan. She would just talk about how great Aaron Rodgers was until about 3 weeks ago.
Yeah.
It is over.
And this is frankly, we all know this is a battle topic in the U.S. I'm on the pro-vaccination side. I don't want to insult people elsewhere in the U.S. that hate it, but it's unfortunately a political issue. I wish it wasn't.
Right.
I wish we could just concentrate on what's the science and what's good for people. And there can be debates there, but
The thing is, right? I mean, he lied. I mean, they straight out asked him, "Have you been vaccinated?" And he said,
That's not
"Yeah."
good. Yeah.
Kyrie Irving, he may be crazy, but he's telling the truth. He does not believe in vaccine mandates, and therefore he is refusing to work. At least he's being honest.
At least he's truthful.
I appreciate that.
Good. Appreciate him being truthful.
Let's see. So, did you? Oh, I think it was right when you got cut off. I was asking. We were still talking about hardware, right? I was asking what kind of microphone you use. Are you just using whatever's built into the computer, or are you using some cool microphone?
It's not cool like yours. At the moment, because of inexplicable technical difficulties earlier, I'm using the mic that's built into my very old Jabra speakerphone, which is, I think, fine. I don't know how I sound.
Yeah, you're fine.
It's a great speaker to hear. Okay, this is like the world's oldest device. This thing's probably 8 years old, but you plug it into a USB, it works well. I can hear everyone perfectly, but I'm told the microphone, let me turn it up again. I'm told the microphone's not as good, so I'm using the microphones usually, maybe not right now, on my cameras. They're not special mics like you've got. My cameras, I'm looking for the name, if anyone cares. Sorry.
Sorry.
I will find it.
Is it anything special, or is it just?
It's pretty ordinary webcam, but ones that are well reviewed. A Logitech C920X. It's ordinary Amazon stuff, but well regarded. And then I have a Nexigo N860, which isn't as good, but was really cheap, and I needed two because of software conflicts. But I'm told the microphones on those cameras are better, so I usually use them.
All right. Yeah. So have you gotten a lot more tech savvy over the course of this pandemic?
Yes, I mean, I'm a psychotherapist, but I started out life as a product manager in the tech industry a billion years ago. I used to be a security product manager for Digix web hosting, which they, God help us, they got bought by WorldCom, and then Verizon eventually ended up with the server farm.
Nice.
Yeah, so no,
that's the 90s, right?
Yeah, like 20 years ago. So I'd handle internet intrusion software and firewalls and the service packages around that. So like the NOC that would 24/7 watch for security events. Anyway, I'm getting boring, but I used to do that.
I don't think you're getting boring.
Where did
but I'm a giant nerd.
I forgot the question. Oh, what did I learn? Okay, so I had to learn a lot of Raspberry Pi from scratch. Now, I knew a little bit of Linux before. I'm no expert now, but I did a ton, like hours and hours and hours of forum searching, looking for how to implement, how do you install Bitwarden? How do you install Docker? How do you install Pi-hole DNS server? Speedify was relatively easy to install. How do I do backups? Oh, the normal way of backups are not working. Okay, how do I work around that? So I learned a lot of that. I learned I have a ring light, no big deal, but I how to do lighting a little bit better. I learned how to do backdrops, but I don't because it runs the CPU of my laptop too quickly. So I'm not doing that. I've got Ethernet cables strewn all over the place. I learned a little bit more about how to program my routers. I learned what ISPs to buy and fire, what video conferencing software to buy and fire. I learned how to look at server logs to see what traffic was going on and whether or not I wished to allow it. Yeah, I picked up a lot of networking and internet security skills along the way.
Right. All right. So here's an interesting topic from Mr. Urban World. Well, he starts out by pointing it's an interesting topic. So, he says he's gone to group sessions in virtual reality, and it's something great for therapists because we are still face to face in the same facility, just virtually. Have you played with VR at all? Have you done anything with it?
Not since, what was the name of it even? Not since an outdated VR from 10 or 15 years ago. So I like the idea, and it would have to be HIPAA compliant. So to be boring, that's a medical privacy. So I can't just go out and use the coolest new technology because I have to have a legal agreement that they'll keep data safe, which is a good thing, but it's restrictive technology. That what the I'll say caller, but what the caller is talking about, I assume, is that I'm sure there's some software out there that would be compliant. So that's a very long answer to say no, I haven't tried it. I'd like to.
Yeah, it's cool.
Yeah, very cool.
Yeah. I played with the cardboard, right, where you put your phone in the cardboard thing and strapped it to your head a couple of years ago, and it was actually good enough to make me believe that this stuff is coming, right? It won't be cell phone strapped to your face like I did, but they had a whole bunch of demo apps, and they had movies, and they had games, right? I mean, the New York Times had some really neat documentaries, right, where they interviewed an artist that's sitting in a room full of his art.
Yeah.
So you could decide whether you want to watch the artist or go off and look at all his works of art while he talked in the background. And
I need to start playing with that.
I assume it's better now, but
it's got to be great. I mean, I was looking at really old stuff. Avatars on Second Life. They used to have a therapy island on Second Life. Yeah, which was a good idea, but not medical data compliant. I don't know how they. Maybe they just blew that off and did it anyway. I don't know. So I need to get myself some.
Were any of the therapists actually therapists on that island?
That's a good question. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah.
Do therapists go to therapy?
Yes, I've gone to therapy in the past, and I also kept for years and until this fall. I kept a supervisor. So even though I'm independently licensed, so a supervisor helps you with your cases, but there's a little bit of mental health help that goes on there too. So it's sometimes kind of a blend of mental health and help with cases. So you've got someone older and more experienced who can give you a few pointers, kick around a case. But therapists definitely go to therapy. I've done it myself, and I have some therapists as clients.
All right, Mr. Urban World is back. As of today, the Oculus Quest 2 has reached 10 million users. This is the virtual reality headset. The tech is so good that now I cannot see it failing.
All right, I'm writing down the name.
All right,
Oculus Quest 2. I may go play with that.
Yeah, I might too.
Okay, great VR headset.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's one of Facebook's ones, right? They bought Oculus.
As long as they're not handling the data, I could use the hardware.
Yeah. I'm sure you can trust them. All right. Call Me V asks, who are some people in your field that you look up to?
My supervisor I saw for years, Dr. Lindsay Daniels, in Maryland. She's an expert in trauma, among other things. Going way back, something that's basic now, but Carl Rodgers, Unconditional Positive Regard, being a calming presence, respecting people no matter what they say or do. That's just basic now. It's almost been incorporated in all therapy styles, but that was actually like a thing in the 60s and 70s. And you think back and go, well, how could that not have always been the case? How could you not have listened or respected people? And the better doctors probably did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's funny how these things, they're cutting edge at one point, and then 7 years later, people can't imagine that was anything but common sense, right? Keeps happening. So we are live, and I see people keep joining. So if you have questions for Michael, just go ahead and post them in the comments. We are answering.
Yeah. Do you want to read it off, or do you want me to?
Ironically, therapists have one of the highest suicide rates. You're better off doing MDMA, 2B, or under supervision, guided self-reflection. Okay.
Depends what you think.
Psychoactives, right?
I'm not opposed to psychoactives. Do you do it on your own? Yeah, I don't know. Maybe under supervision. Now, what type of help you get? Just get help if you need it. So see a therapist. If you're religious, see a minister, a priest, a rabbi, or whatever. If you've got friends who are good listeners, talk to them. If you don't want to talk to anybody, well, you should talk to someone. But an antidepressant is good. There's some over-the-counter things that are good. Yeah, there's a lot of research going on with psychoactive substances. I'm not opposed. Not talking to therapists because they have a high suicide rate. I respectfully don't agree with that one. Not just for self-interested reasons, but because therapists can be helpful. And yes, they have a high suicide rate, so they do have to take care of themselves. So do doctors.
Dentists, I hear, right?
I don't remember, but you could be right. Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. I guess people aren't that happy walking into the dentist's office a lot of times.
Probably not. No. Therapists do need to learn to unburden. There's something I call the switch. I don't. It maybe it has a scientific name, but many years ago in college as an undergrad, I worked at a crisis hotline, and I learned that there were a couple categories of people student volunteers who worked there. Those who would take on the burdens of the callers too much and burn out, right? And they became less effective counselors, if effective at all. Those who would take on the burdens of callers too much and quit because there's too much of them. And those who would still care, yet be able to turn off the cares when they went home. So there's a special kind of trick here.
Yeah.
They do genuinely care, but they can turn it off somehow when they go home. I don't know how I affect that special trick, but it's a necessity in the helping professions.
Yeah. So make sure when you switch contexts, you leave it at home, right?
Yeah.
A lot of stuff about don't take your laptop into bed with you, right? People talk about, right?
Mm-hmm.
You don't want bed to be somewhere where you think about work, right?
Right.
That you hear about.
That's part of sleep hygiene too, which I discuss with people sometimes, because bad sleep leads to depression, hypertension, anxiety, other problems.
All right, awesome.
Yeah.
Not awesome. Awesome. Wrong answer.
It's an answer.
Anxiety, depression. Great. What I was actually getting at is we're coming up on an hour here. So if you have questions for Michael, we're getting to last chances. So if somebody has been listening to this and thinks, hey, I should talk to someone, how does somebody get started? How do they contact you or find someone like you in their area or whatever?
Okay. There's a couple ways. If you're elsewhere in the country, or even if you're in Maryland, you could look at the Psychology Today website, and there's a directory of therapists. You could look at Therapy Tribe. There's a directory of therapists. There's several directories out there. You could also, it's often harder to do, but every single insurance company has a directory of providers. Depending on the insurance company, it's sometimes up to date or not. I mean, it's nice when you can get an up-to-date directory and a picture and know something about the person before you contact them. So like the Psychology Today directory is good. I'm licensed in Maryland, so I can only see people in Maryland. I can be reached at, I'll spell this, it's michael@hygeacounseling.com. So MICHAEL at HYGEIA counseling.com. Or if you want to email me and you're elsewhere in the country, I could try and hook you up. But I'm not a directory, that said, but give me a shout if you want to.
How do you know if you have a good therapist? Right? I mean,
there's a good personal connection. So that doesn't necessarily mean that they're a bad therapist if you don't, but they're not the right one for you. So you need a good personal connection. You feel comfortable with them. You feel like they listen. You feel like they respect you. They may, or the technique matters a little bit less, but they're competent, right? They can put together a treatment plan. They can explain what the issues are that they're seeing and listen to what you think the issues are. They can explain what techniques they're going to use. They're also a good therapist if they're willing to say, hey, I can treat these 3 things, but not this 4th one. Here are some resources. I'm going to refer you out for that. That doesn't make them incompetent. That means that they know the limits of their capability. That's a keeper as long as you have some issues they can help you with.
Right.
So that's the short answer. But personal connection is the most important thing. And then they have some technical skills that are good, and there's a lot of different ways to do therapy. So there's no one school I'd say is best.
Right. All right. That's fantastic. So I think we're wrapping up here. So a couple things for those people who are interested in Speedify, making your internet more reliable, like Michael does, like I do. We are having a sale this week. Cyber Week 21 is the coupon. It's up there. Cyber Week 21, you put that in, 40% off any yearly plans. This is the best deal you're going to get. So if you go to speedify.com, you can use that. As I said, the next stream is next Thursday, 2 days from now, same time, 5 p.m. Eastern. I'm going to set up a Raspberry Pi with Speedify to be a router. Same process that Michael did to get his reliable internet. I'm just gonna, it'll be this Pi. I'm gonna reformat it probably tonight and go through it on camera. And if anyone has any questions or whatever, you can ask. And it will be great. All right, I see there some links we're posting, and that's it. All right, so thank you so much, Michael. I think
thank you.
This was really great and hopefully very helpful to people.
So, yeah, reach out to Psychology Today directly. Reach out to me, but yeah, look for the help that you're willing to receive. That the best help is the help that you're willing to take, whether it's exercise, friends, a therapist, a minister, whatever. Get the help you need from whatever source. So, and thank you.
Great advice. Thank you.
Thanks.
All right.
Appreciate it.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
See you online.